All right, we're ready for Genesis 48. You know, color blindness is sad. My Well, yeah, you probably did, but my daughter-in-law's father is colorblind, and like when he walked into our house, we have a African violet that sits right there we've had for years, and it has huge blooms on it. And he said, "Oh, that's pretty." He said, "Well, I really can't tell." He said, "But it's big." Yeah. Yeah, well, that's usually the way most of us are, isn't it? Well, we're ready for Genesis 48. We'll see how fast we can fly through this. We're on the downward tread. It's a great, great story. Happy Easter. Hope that Easter Bunny came to see you. But we're glad that you're here and hope that you had a good weekend. In Genesis 48, or by the time we get to Genesis 48, Jacob and the whole family has come. They've come to where Joseph is by this time. Joseph is doing well. He makes a promise right as we closed out the 47th chapter. He made a promise to his father Jacob. Basically, Jacob said, "Don't bury me here. Carry me home. I want to be buried at home." And so Joseph made that promise. And now in the 48th chapter, we begin a little bit of this, and we see it really in the 49th chapter. And if we get there, we'll talk about that. But Jacob begins to bless Joseph's sons and really all of the sons. He does all of the sons in the 49th chapter. He talks about them. But in the 48th chapter, we have what's called a theophany. I'll explain that as we go along. But Jacob, interestingly, at least in my way of looking at it, interestingly blesses Joseph's sons. And we'll see why, and we'll see something that has already occurred, so to speak, at least in form, before occur again. And let's watch that. It says, "Now it came to pass after these things that Joseph was told, 'Indeed, your father is sick.' And he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Jacob was told, 'Look, your son Joseph is coming to you.' And Israel straightened himself and sat up in the bed. He gathered his strength, probably, is the thought. So he's laid in bed. He's feeling miserable. He's feeling awful. And all of a sudden he hears that Joseph is coming. And so he gathers himself up, sits up in bed, excuse me, and ready to carry on the conversation. Jacob said to Joseph, 'God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me and said to me, Behold, I'll make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make of you a multitude of people and give this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession.'" So he rehashes here God's promise. He's going back over something we've already seen. We'll not spend time to look at it and dissect it in detail because we've already done that. But he's just telling, which is good. We should, the best way I can say this is we should from time to time bore our children with family history. And the reason we should do that is because while they don't want to hear it now, once we die and they don't have access to it, guess what they want to hear? Family history. Family history. My aunt on my father's side, and she passed away. It was just me and my sister were the only ones that could take care of her stuff, and she asked me to take care of it. And as I was going through it one day, and she didn't have much, but she had two different lists, and they're of our family tree, our family lineage, which I didn't know, and didn't really know my grandfather. He was around, but he was around. He wasn't part of the family. He had chosen the neighbor's wife instead of my grandmother. He had walked away years before I was born. And so anyway, but I didn't know those either family. and my grandmother's or my grandfather's family. And so it's good to have those things, but I don't know any of the stories that go along with them because that was not part of that family what they did. And Dad shared with me some things, and it's interesting. But now I have no access to those stories, and so I didn't want to hear them so much years ago. But it's good, and it's good that he's rehashing this. And so now he says, verse 5, now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. And so he's adopting, if you will, his own son's children. You don't really do that. You can't do that from a legal standpoint in this day and age unless they're given over and they give up rights to them. But Jacob is beginning to claim Joseph's sons because he's going to give them equal possessions. And so he's setting all of this up. And so he says, they were born to you in Egypt. They before I came to Egypt, but they're mine. Your offspring, verse 6, whom you begat, after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. But as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way, when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath. And I buried her there on the way to Ephrath. And by the way, then, your translators is helping us out. Ephrath, Bethlehem. And so it kind of gives us a place. And of course, Rachel, we know, died in childbirth, bearing Benjamin at the time. And so he gives him this history, but he says, okay, now Manasseh and Ephraim, they're mine. The rest are yours. Don't you just like the way he's handling his family? It just seems like, at least to me, and maybe I look at it wrongfully, but it seems to me that Israel or Jacob really had problems handling his family. He was not the best of family men, so to speak. Israel saw Joseph's sons and he said, who are these? So there's probably some eyesight problems there because he wants to know who these are, but also maybe even some what we would call today dementia. In other words, he's already begun to claim them, but now he wants to know, well, who these are. And so Joseph said to his father, well, they're my sons, whom God's given to me in this place. And he said, please bring them to me and I'll bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I have not thought to see your face, but in fact, God has also shown me your offspring. So Joseph brought them from beside his knees, and he bowed down with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near. Then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, guiding his hands knowingly for Manasseh, was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has fed me all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. Let my name be named among them or upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So we have a blessing. Did you catch what happened though? The blessing is placed upon the youngest instead of the oldest. That's why instead of Esau and Jacob like it should have been, we have the stories of Jacob and Esau, right? Remember? It was switched. Of course, Jacob pulled a fast one on everybody, and his mama pulled a fast one. And Jacob was the one blessed instead of Esau. And so now Jacob is taking of the two of the sons of Joseph, and he's blessing the young one over the old one, which is not what was supposed to happen. But having said that, it's verse 15 and 16 are really beautiful in the wording. He talks about God. God was with my fathers, and so he establishes a fact. The fact is God. But God was with my fathers. And he says, God who's fed me all along. So he's talking about fatherhood of God, the protection that God gave him with regards to feeding him, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil. So he says, salvation. He really points out three things that are most important, most impactful with regards to God. And then he turns and he says, bless the lads. So as he begins by extolling the great virtues of God, he then turns, if you will, this little prayer to the children, to Manasseh and Ephraim. Let my name be upon them, the name of the fathers of Abraham and Isaac. Let them grow into the multitude in the midst of the earth. Let them grow. Let them be the ones that grow the family, part of the family. And that's interesting that instead of saying, okay, well, Joseph, you'll get yours and then they will get theirs. Seemingly, you might say, well, he's making up for lost time. He's making up for lost events in the life of Joseph and the life of Manasseh and Ephraim. And you can look at it that way, see that. But at the same time, too, all of a sudden, he's really going against the way that it was with regards to passing down of lineage and of birthrights and children and heirs, and he's changing it all up for his own good, for his own will. And then he says in verse 17, now when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. Ephraim, when the kingdom is divided, his part, if you will, his part of the land, the northern part, becomes the largest. And so as as Jacob is saying, oh no, he's going to be all right. You know, the oldest one's going to be all right, but the youngest one, he's going to be a greater nation. And so in many ways, this is a prediction of what's going to happen and does happen when we get over into the 1st and 2nd Kings and the land is divided, Israel to the north and Judah to the south. But his father, when he refused, and he said, no, this is what's going to happen. Verse 20 says, so he blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will bless, saying, may God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he said Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said to Joseph, behold, I'm dying, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. And so he says, I'm giving you back. We're not exactly sure when he talks about he took this land, certain part of this land from the Amorites. We're not exactly sure when this was, but he says, this is the portion. This is what you're getting. And so it's a good land, and I'm going to give it to you. Anything else, it's just it's a part of this great story.
Oh, wow, that is a great story. It certainly makes us think what Jacob was actually doing.
Yeah.
And it's even remembering what
Yeah.
See, thinking God's will,
Yeah.
he trying to change things to himself. Did he, in fact, have many issues? Or this God's providence
Right.
working through him once again?
Right. Yes. Yes, and those are all legitimate questions that we really just don't have the answer to, but we do wonder, and I agree with you. What was going on? What was he thinking? Why did he do this? To, like I say, he broke the chain, if you will, of inheritance by claiming Joseph's kids as his kids. That was just not, you just didn't do that unless, of course, Joseph had passed away. And then there were different circumstances that would be under consideration.
I can even understand knowing his grandchildren as his point of view that this is where the seed is going to be. Yes, they're going to have the name that God had providence, and yes, while they're not direct lineage, they are my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
So through them, these things will happen. But then, as
Yeah. 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 I don't have an answer for it. I think, like I said, when you look at verse 19, he talks about, well, the oldest one's going to do all right, but the youngest, great nation. That in many ways we know that predictive, because we have the full story. We have First, Second Kings. We have where the land was divided. We have Israel was from the standpoint of numbers was the greater nation north. Now, it wasn't the most righteous of nations. Matter of fact, the north never had a righteous king when land was divided. The south did. The south had a few, had, depending on how you look at it, 4, some say 6. 4 is probably a more correct number. Righteous kings through the times lasted a whole lot longer than the northern kingdom, because the northern kingdom, because of its unrighteousness, I don't know that I'd say imploded, but God made sure that it was taken over, and then, like I say, it was taken over a whole lot quicker than the southern kingdom was. But was this part of God's plan? Was this part of God's way? I think ultimately we have to say yes, but it's not explained.
was it a legal issue?
It may have been.
Just think of what we would have done. I knew
Yeah.
and this is a clear violation.
Yes. Yeah. Very true. Very true. Yeah. Yeah. It's
I don't guess they had any part
no, no. And let's. I wish Suze was here. I'm going to tell a little bit of her story, if you don't mind. When Suzanne was 2.5 years old, her mother died, colon cancer, and it left her father. And her father, okay, he's not the strongest of men, or was not the strongest of men, and had some issues as well. He had some issues that really were probably dated back to the Korean War that he was in. And so anyway, he was not able really to raise Suzanne. He married. I don't really know how many years later, not too many, after Suzanne's mother died. But anyway, Suzanne was raised by her grandparents and by some other women that just I thank the good Lord for every day, that were just wonderful people to Suzanne. And Suzanne never went back to her father's house. She stayed, even though he remarried, she stayed with her grandparents, and they raised her, but without claiming her. In other words, everything went to Billy Mack when they passed away. She was not an heir. Like say, she didn't have Bart Durham either. And so there are things today that happen like that. But it is, yeah, just there. Like say, from the standpoint of saying 100%, why did this happen? I don't know. I don't know. You could, I think when you look at the story, you could say, well, was it dementia? Yes. Or could be, yes. Could be. Was it the fact that he had seen it had happened with him and his brother? And so thus he's just repeating what he had experienced before. You can say, well, that could possibly be the answer. Could it be that it was just, this was God's way, and God had given it to him, maybe unknowingly, as far as he knew, that this is the way it's going to be? Could be. I don't have the answer for those questions because I don't see them in the text. But I see the fact that it was a shame in many ways that it was done this way, but this was the way that it was done.
To many non-believers, this is an evidence that there are fallacies with inspired work. They take this approach, then you admit, what about this situation? Jacob himself is passing it on. So, therefore, the inspired word isn't inspired.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That attack goes across the board,
Yeah.
even into the New Testament.
Yeah. 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 When you go at something with what I call a worldview, but when you go at something with a view, in other words, we all see what we see through the lens that we have. Our lens is that the Bible is inspired. It is from God. It is inerrant. It is correct in all of its ways. It tells the story. There are those, though, that come to the Bible through the lens, seeing it through the lens of the Bible is a fairy tale. It's a made-up book. One of the things for me that would show that it's not a made-up book or even a made-up story is that there are so many what would be perceived, and rightfully so, as imperfections. If I'm going to write a book, I'm not going to tell you about the imperfections of all the folks that are good. Now, I might tell you of the scoundrels. I'm really worried. My wife likes a lot of these mysteries, and she's been watching last night and this morning. She's watching these shows, The Devil Beside Me or The Evil Beside Me. I don't know, but I'm not evil, but I think she's going to try to portray me as evil to y'all. So might want to not listen to her. but for yeah, in the middle of that. But for me, like I say, if I'm going to write a book and talk about these good people, if I'm going to talk about the evil people, I'm going to talk about evil in their life. But these good people, and it shows the imperfections, and it shows if this was part. Let's play devil's advocate for a minute. If this was part of God's plan, like I say, it's not revealed that this was God's plan, then we do need some questions answered. Could it have been that this was the choice of Jacob? And yet God's going to work it all out through his providence for our good. It's very possible. Sometimes, I'm going to get into what I believe. Sometimes in our life, the events in our life, well, all the events in our life, are not directed by God. In other words, God doesn't whisper in our ear every time and say, do this, do that, do this over here, make this decision, make that decision. We are free moral agents. But God takes, and this is the part really I can't explain, but I truly, truly, truly do believe it. God takes the parts of my life where I've made the bad decisions and where I've made the right decisions, and God takes all of that with His power, with His providence, with His care, and He weaves that into my story such that it's all going to work for my good. Understanding, in God's eyes, my good is salvation. Not bank account, not possessions, but salvation. That's how I view it. I'm not saying that, I know it all and I got it all figured out. I'm not saying that. But that's how I see it. And that's how I see and understand the providence of God. And I think somehow this all works out the way it should. But this is a story that's attacked. And it's attacked because they want to see the flaws. But the flaws are not the part of God's part, but it's the human element that comes in. Yeah. And you're right. You're right. You can't. Well, I don't know that I don't think can't is the right word. It's very, very difficult to. And you hit more walls than you do tunnels to get through. And I agree with you, yeah. Yeah.
Try to find peace within himself, to look at God's in the inspired word.
Yeah.
Very much as Christ hanged on the cross. I would have hope.
Yeah.
And that's not what a lot of unbelievers, cynics, even those who must have something.
Yeah. Right.
Because it was murder.
Right.
It was, you're making him a martyr.
Yeah.
For your cause, not for the world.
That's right. Oh, yes, that's exactly right. The parallel to that is in Matthew 10, where Jesus sends the apostles out on the limited commission. And he basically tells them that there's going to be cities that you're going to go in and folks aren't going to accept you. Go outside the gate, shake the dust off your feet, and go to the next town. Sometimes we have to do that. I don't like that. But I realize that's a possibility. Go over then to Romans chapter 2, where it talks about how that God gave them up because of their vile hearts, because of their unbelief. God gave them up. If God can give people up, then there are times. Brother, I never can remember. I have to go back and always find it. I can't remember. I believe it was Brother Gus Nichols. If it wasn't Brother Gus Nichols, it was Brother G.K. Wallace. But I believe it was Brother Gus Nichols that did no telling how many Bible studies, home Bible studies with people. Of course, that was in a day and age which people wanted to study the Bible, and they'd welcome you into their house and study the Bible. And Brother Nichols would always start out with, he would say, do you believe in God? Yes. Good. Do you believe that the Bible is God's Word? Yes. Do you believe it's the inspired Word of God? Yes. When you see what is in the Word of God, are you willing to do what the Word of God tells you to do? Yes. Now, it was said that in asking those questions, if he ever received a no and they couldn't get past that he didn't go further with the study. In other words, it was the cynic and you were meeting the wall and and there's just not a whole lot you could do. Now, I don't mean that my understanding is that he didn't cut them off and he wouldn't talk to them, but there was really no sense in studying further. It's sort of like, I know of a preacher that was going to do some premarital counseling with a couple. And so on the first session, as he was talking to them, he found out that they were living together. And so he said, okay, he said, for the benefit of us moving forward, and for the benefit of what I believe, and for the benefit of what I believe marriage should be and how it should be done, I'm going to ask you to live in separate houses. No conjugal visits, separate houses until after the wedding. It was only going to be, I think, a couple of months away. And they, according to the story, they agreed. But then they decided not to. They left agreeing, but then the next day called the preacher and said, no, we're gonna live together. And he said, that was part of the condition of me doing the wedding. I just can't do the wedding. And so they said, well, what about the premarital counseling? And he said, well, you just need to go to somebody else. Because if you can't believe what I'm telling you right here, why do we need to go further? And so then family members got involved and it got ugly. That's factual because I are the preacher. And it's one of those things where, here's what the Bible says. And if you're not going to believe what I say, why do we go further?
Why do you preach funerals for non-believers? A lot of preachers will do that.
Oh, I've done it. Yeah, that's interesting. That's always fun. Why do you do it? Well, you do it for the reception afterwards. No, no. That was you do it for several reasons. First of all, you're not preaching. You're not preaching anybody into heaven. I don't even. Faithful members of the church, I don't even preach into heaven. I'll talk about maybe they are prepared and we need to be prepared, but I don't. Now, I've heard a young preacher talk about his grandfather being in heaven, and I thought, not according to the stories I know about the dude, But I preach it in order to hopefully make inroads into the family, into those that are living, and touch their hearts maybe with something, open a door as far as, because a lot of times, especially if I don't know the family or if the family's wayward, that gets me into the door, and then I can follow up 2-3 weeks later. How you doing? What's going on? We would love to have you come to church. So you do it for a lot of different reasons. And I'll marry people that aren't members of the church, as long as they're scripturally can get married, Now, if they can't, I just say, I just can't, and move them on. I've got to start. Well, no, I won't. I'll start with a couple in September. I've got a wedding at the end of October back in Dixon, young couple, and I'll start premarital counseling with them 1st September, and we'll do their wedding. I don't know if the little girl is a member of the church. If she is, she's done it since I left Dixon. No, the boy is. He was. I didn't hold him, but I got to pet on him when he was born. Right, he was a day old, and I was in the hospital with family. So I've known the boy for. Not a member of the church. Yeah, because she, according to the Bible, she has every right to. She's not, committing fornication or anything. Or adultery, excuse me. She's not committing adultery. So. You have the right to marry a non-believer. Yeah. The second time you can't. 1 Corinthians 7, there's a debate over that. Not under bondage. Verse 39. And that gets back to kind of what Jim was saying. It's all in how you look at that, too. verse 39 of 1 Corinthians 7. Anything else? Yeah. Well, and I will say this: I may have been strongly influenced in that point. My mother was not a member of the church when she and my father were married, and okay, so they would have been married 9 years later. Mother was baptized for the remission of her sins, and she was raised going to church. She was, I don't like calling names, but she was Cumberland Presbyterian, and but my papa, who was strong in his faith, he told my mother, he said, "You need to go to church with your husband." And I kind of, I wonder if he had gone to my father and said, "You need to go to church with my daughter," how things would have changed. Things would have been different. I probably would have been an accountant instead of a preacher. But who knows? I wouldn't have been an engineer. Know that. Math was in that end, not my forte. But anything else? Yeah, basically anybody that the way I set it up, and I actually talked to the elders about this when we interviewed. As far as me doing a wedding service, anybody that hasn't been married before, anybody that spouse has died, and anybody that has divorced, but what I would define according to Matthew 5:31-32, Matthew 19:9 as a scriptural divorce that can thus remarry. And then you say, well, what about those that wouldn't? I don't put them together, and I encourage them to study the Bible. You might, and I understand there are preachers that do, and the way they look at it is not from a scriptural standpoint. It's first of all to make inroads into the family, but it's also second of all they do it because they say I'm simply acting as an officiant of the state, and there's truth in that. But Steve, do you remember in Catherine's, because it's changed just a couple of years ago, you had to sign on the marriage certificate, you had to sign whether it was religious or civil. Is that still? Yeah, it's a box. Still okay, still there. I was thinking it changed that year. I wasn't preaching. I was thinking it had changed, and I haven't done a wedding in 3 or 4 years now. Well, maybe longer than that. But yeah. So I check religious, but really and truly it's not. When you think about what we do in wedding service, is really not as viewed by the law, is really not a religious, it's really a civil service. And so, but done by a religious officiant. Anything else? Genesis 49 then. All good, all true, and I appreciate it. I love interaction. Like I said Wednesday night, I learn, and that's part of what I enjoy about classes is learning. John 3, yeah, turning water into wine. John 2, excuse me. Yes, turning water into wine, first miracle. Yeah. Of course, you could say his virgin birth, but he didn't do that. He was just the result of that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it gets back to what Jim said so correctly. So it's how we view it, and he's so right, and that affects how we look at it. that's why I'll put a plug in now. That's why when we finish this study here in a couple of weeks or a week, ever how long it takes us to get through the 50th chapter, we're going to talk about not just Bible study. I want to venture into a little bit of, we're not going to spend weeks upon weeks, but I want to kind of give you an overview of how to approach your Bible study, not just how to do a Bible study. In other words, do I in reading my Bible every day, how do I study my Bible? Do I study it from the standpoint of, do I want to read X number of chapters? Do I want to read X number of verses? Do I want to do a topical Bible study? Do I want to do what I call 3 5s? We'll talk about that. Do I want to try to finish up like the Bible in a year? Do I want to finish a book? We'll talk about all that, but we're going to talk about how do you interpret them, what you've read. And like I say, I've had courses in it, and we're not going to do that. I wouldn't do that to you, but we'll talk about a little bit of that and how we interpret the Bible and things of that nature. So I'll put that plug in to remind you that is what anything along that line. If you have a question, please ask, and I'll try to incorporate it in those series of lessons. Well, all right. Well, in the 49th chapter, we'll go on and get started for just a minute. We have Jacob's last words, which that's something that I want to say a little bit about. I think last words are important. I think last words are good. I really don't have, so to speak, last words with Mom. Dad, last words with Dad were kind of a joke, which that was kind of his personality anyway, so it was kind of good. But last words are good, and if you're in your right mind and you can have those last words with your youngins, by all means have them, because it will mean so much to them. Jacob's last words are about his sons, and we'll stop because people are coming in. But there's parallelism in the Bible. You see it especially in Psalms, but you're going to see it here. Parallelism is simply where something is said in one line, and in the next line, the author either says the same thing in different words, or he says the opposite. And we'll talk about a little bit about parallelism next week, but we'll get into the 49th chapter and may start the 50th chapter. I want to spend probably at least a week and a half I'd like to spend on the 50th chapter. There's a lot of great stuff in it. We thank y'all. Hope you have a great week. Hope the Easter Bunny's good to you. If he hadn't already come see you, that he'll come see you and bring you something really good to eat. Y'all have a great day. Thank y'all.